Welcome to the Different Frames podcast. I'm Greg Joya. I'm with Antonio and David as before, and we're going to talk about some movies. We promised you last time when we did our Handshake 5 that our next episode would be us talking about each other's Handshake 5 after having watched it. We did that, and through a series of errors, we do not have a recording of that. So that podcast might happen again. It might never happen, but trust us, it did happen. Quick recap. I think Anti-Mame was kind of it didn't quite hold up, but the other 9 movies were great. I believe Christmas in July and Throne of Blood were the 2 big discoveries for each of us. So there's the quick version of what it took us about 2 hours to record that you may never hear. You may hear some different version of it. But today we've decided just to talk about the movies. So let's do that. Antonio, do you want to introduce yourself? Do you want to say anything?
I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I think, our idea of trying to dissect what the movie industry has kind of become and what we can do to save movies is like a popular conversation point right now in like culture. I feel like every other day I see some sort of like headline or something about like movies closing or like the box office, and it seems so like dour in some sense, but I think we could learn a lot through talking, like both of us and like David too, with like who have like more of a knowledge of film history. Maybe we can kind of see what trends have happened throughout history and what we can do to like change that in the future.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing, especially even though no one but us heard it since we don't have the recording. At the end of our last podcast, we said we were going to talk about this. And since then, I've noticed almost daily on movie chat boards, in tweets, just Facebook, just everywhere, same thing. Just people talking about why is cinema failing, and a lot of people throwing out a lot of reasons, a lot of which I think aren't really accurate reasons. Just my opinion. I've got my own list of reasons why I think cinema is where it is. I thought maybe we could start. Well, actually, before we start, I thought we should probably define what we're talking about here. And maybe this is just me, but when I say cinema, I mean something like somewhat specific. I mean, when you go to a public theater, you see something on a big screen, you see it with a crowd of strangers. To me, that's cinema versus film, which is just the movies, any context. You watch a VHS tape, a DVD, a Blu-ray, a stream, you project something, whatever. Film is just film. But cinema is what I think is in trouble. I think film is fine. I think they're still making movies. I think they'll always make movies. But I'm worried about cinema specifically. I don't know if that jives with how you guys see this.
I actually wrote out a 4 different categories of possible things that we're talking about here. I took a lot of notes earlier today. First is, so we have what I was calling cinema, which I defined as the art form. Cinema is a thing that is made, to paraphrase Steven Soderbergh's thing here. And then there's viewership, which is just the act of watching movies. You watch them at your house, you watch them anyway. Then there is moviegoing, which is the act of going to a theater, sitting in the darkened theater with strangers, etc. And then there's Hollywood, which is a business of the specifics of American movie making.
Okay. I think I kind of smushed some of those together. I believe that you guys, as the actual kind of students of film and filmmakers, have a better grasp on the real definitions. To me, it was just cinemas. When you go to the movies are what you see.
Sure. But I just wanted to make sure we had all the same terms going.
But I like that. So yeah, I think. Do we all agree that moviegoing? Moviegoing is what you called going.
That's
to
what I was calling it. Yeah.
Do we agree that moviegoing is having some issues these days?
I would say very clearly having issues as far as gaining viewers to reflect any sort of sustainable profit that these like studios like Hollywood can like sustain, because you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars of losses and because people aren't filling in those seats that they're supposed to be, and then there's going to be consequences to that of an industry that can't sustain itself. So that as far as movie going, you're seeing like theaters shut down, you're seeing movies not make profits back, and so there's very clearly the numbers of people movie going public is going down.
Yeah, I think it's inarguable that people aren't going to the movies as often as they used to. And I think the reason I a lot of times on Twitter especially, I'll see these threads of people and they're kind of parroting the same things, which I don't think are necessarily totally accurate, but they say that they think this is because movies are so much worse today, which I believe. I've been hearing that my entire life. I imagine if you go back to the Great Train Robbery, somebody's, well, that wasn't as good as Trip to the Moon. Yeah. But, I think that there have always been lousy movies. And for all my life, lousy movies have made huge profits. I don't think the movies are any worse today. I think it's not that the public has suddenly become, they've developed taste. I think there's still a lot of people out there that'll go see whatever crap you put in front of them. They're just not going in general. Other people talk about, oh, well, I'm tired of all the rude people in the theaters. And that's another one that when I would hear that, I would think to myself, I'm in my 50s. I've been going to the movies. I think the first time I was just before The Sting. We talked about this right before my 7th birthday. I don't ever remember any kind of, there have been people at times where someone's like talked in a theater or something, or I've seen someone's phone light up. And I go to movies all the time. I never encounter these rude theater goers that people are always on about. I don't know. And since I started since I started seeing that, I've been asking people, and I'll ask you guys the question. I asked my wife, I asked my brother, I asked about a dozen people. They all gave me the same answer. Like, no, actually, I can never remember any major distraction in a movie theater. Like, I've never been to a movie where somebody was just having a full-on conversation. I've never seen anybody answer a phone in a movie. Have you guys encountered that? And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but...
Yeah, I mean, I have there's a number of times I can recall where someone was doing something or talking or whatever in a movie and it distracted me. But if that's a serious thing, I don't know if that's a serious anomaly with today. Maybe the phone thing is because it's a bright screen is a bit more distracting.
But how often do you see someone pull out a phone in a theater? I don't think I ever
every single time I go to a theater.
Yeah,
every single time.
Even even the ones where they're no phones. Sometimes I'll see the guy next to me be and I'll
that's
be
I'm very into because and it's not like I'm oblivious. I'm right there. I've never seen anybody just on their phone in a theater. But
my girlfriend never notices it, but I'm a lot taller than her, so I think I get a better view down, and I'm instantly, my eye is drawn to it whenever I see a little burst of light in the room,
That's very interesting.
But it's never kept me from going to see a movie, I'm never some jackass is gonna pull his phone out, I'm out of here,
But that's another...
Because, I mean, if you're at home too, it's okay, it's not going to be that much better. There's the neighbors are doing whatever, and maybe somebody else in your house is going to be on their phone. At a certain point, unless you're in a black box just with no other person.
No, I think that's an excellent point. Even if there are people doing something like that in a theater, the distractions at home are magnitudes greater than whatever they are in the theater. But well, yeah, I was thinking, I was trying to think how I was looking at Letterboxd, and I counted. I've seen 43 movies so far in a theater, and I saw that I've got tickets already purchased for 32 more. So I'm in theaters all the time, and I'm tall. I'm 6'3". I can see, but I don't know. Maybe in Austin, Texas, the people are the Southern polite people. I don't know, but it's certainly never been a problem, certainly not keeping me away. The other thing people talk about is ticket prices. And movies, I think they're still cheap relative to other entertainment. But they also, everything is more. I noticed I had a picture, I was a tweet that I'd sent someone about gas prices in Texas. They were in September 2020, I was talking about gas prices. I noticed gas has doubled in price in less than 4 years here. But then I was looking at my receipts for movies have gone up $1. So, it's less than 10%. So I think movies have not gone up with inflation. So I don't know.
Well, the concessions have also gone up quite a lot.
They've gone up
too.
some, but I don't think they've gone up the level
that much.
I don't think, if you talk about percentages, I think most things have gone up almost double in the past 4 or 5 years. At least groceries, gasoline, a lot of the things that we buy on a day-to-day basis. I don't have a good sense of the prices, but I know they were always expensive, I think is why. But I don't know. I'm skeptical. Well, maybe I'm just the point I think I want to make. The reason I think it's streaming that's keeping people out of theaters. I think that all these other excuses people make about the cost, the patrons, quality of films, I think that people in general are lazy. And when you give them an easy way out, they take it. Most people. I think that there's a small percentage of people who will go the extra mile if they want the quality experience for something. They want something great. They will pay more for it. They will work harder to get it. But I think most people, if you say they can just sit on their ass on a couch and someone will deliver fast food to their door, and they can stream a movie, and they can do all their social interacting on a phone, they'll take it. And I think that's what's killing moviegoing.
Right. The Hollywood industry itself has led to this problem. They sort of, the pandemic, people are still blaming that or whatever, but I think that just exasperated a problem that was already set up, that the studios and Hollywood set up for themselves. They're conditioning people to, I can just, Fall Guy, I might not go to the movie. 2 weeks later, it's on video on demand. All right, I'll watch it maybe half-hour segments on my TV. And so what you're creating is this problem of competing with yourself in a way. But where does the money go, and how do you measure all those things? And then what product are you creating to justify the costs of a movie ticket?
Yeah, I think that the movie industry, that Hollywood, I guess we're calling it Hollywood, they're making the same mistake I think the music industry made. That when MP3s and Napster and suddenly people can get music for free online, the industry kind of freaked out. And that's how we ended up with Spotify, where now you spend $12, you get every song in the world for free. There's no more money to be made for the artist making the music. It's just they did it wrong, and I think that's why we have Spotify. But I think the movie industry they may be creative when it comes to making movies, but they always want to do the safe, least risk thing. And I think it's the streaming is the thing. We better stream our movies. But I think if you see that, the Fall Guy, whatever it is, if you know that you can wait a month and watch it at home, people will do that. And I think people always say, I can watch it for free at home. But they're not watching it. They're paying for these streaming services. That people have this perception, since they aren't paying for it in the moment, that it's somehow free. I actually made a list of the streaming services and the cost. And I just did kind of the main ones. I did Peacock, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, Showtime, Prime, Apple TV Plus, Criterion, Mubi, and YouTube TV. If you subscribe to all of those, you'd pay just under $198.50, and before tax, so over $200. And not everyone gets all. I don't think anybody gets all of those, but people don't seem to realize that, you could spend $200 a month and have all these movies streamed to you, but you're paying for it. If you even get just a few of those, if you get, Peacock, Netflix, and Hulu, Disney, that's almost $50. That's 3-4 movie tickets. I think movie tickets are $12 here, so that's 4 tickets and change. You know, you could go to the movies 4 times. I don't know. I think it's streaming. I think that Hollywood has made it too easy to stay at home and be lazy and watch these movies.
Well, it's 4 movie tickets is the equivalent of like 3 streaming services. But 4 movie tickets is the equivalent of 4 movies, and 4 streaming services is the equivalent of probably about 50,000 titles.
Actually, no.
I think kind of the cost-benefit analysis there.
That's the funny thing, though, is that you think that much, but the streaming service don't have that many movies. There's something like Netflix has about 3,000 movies, and they only have. I saw this too. The movies made in 1980 and earlier, they had something like 38 of them.
Yeah. Netflix doesn't get the distribution from the studios really anymore because all the studios launched their own streaming services, and they don't want to give away their catalog to their competitors. Yeah,
that's part of the trouble too. It's all so broken up. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot more movies on streaming. But how many movies do you think people watch in a month on streaming?
Right. Not many.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly,
they may have access to 10,000, but
it's another sort of illusion of like to keep you just sort of paying money and like scrolling, and you're not making a decision of this is a movie. If let's say maybe here is an idea for a solution to save cinemas, is like you have a movie come out, like a few movies come out, and maybe you don't have a multiplex, you have like a 4 movie theater. You can charge as much, whatever, and you have those movies there for that release window of the theatrical run, and you delay the streaming for like, let's say 6 months or a year, whatever DVDs used to be.
Yeah.
Then these people are like, well, what do I do with my time? I'm going to go to one of these 4 selections of movies. Probably one of them is going to be good. And, then people are kind of like buying into this idea where like, okay, I'm trusting that like this film is going to be something interesting. Whereas like if you have unlimited options, it's like, what do you even choose? It's like, oh, I'll just go back to like The Office or something like that after scrolling for an hour. And it's an illusion that you don't actually own the movies either. You're just subscribing to,
Yeah, no, I think people pay all this money and they think, oh, I've got thousands of movies, but they don't watch that many of them. When they do, they might rewatch a bunch. They'd probably save money in the long run. In fact, I'm almost sure they would save money in the long run if they bought a Blu-ray of the movies they really like to watch over, and then they went and saw 2 or 3 movies a month. Even just 2 a month. It's not like most people went every week anyway, but if people started going back to the movies, but again, I don't think they're going to unless they get a push, because they've been trained to stay at home and be lazy. We have to do like Antonio said, where we delay it. Like if we make them wait a year, then suddenly I think they're gonna want to see these movies. If they know they have to wait a week, they're not. And I think...
Can I ask you guys, do you have any subscriptions to like A-List or...
No, I was about to bring those up, though. I do not have a subscription to Regal has one, and AMC has A-List, and I was trying to remember if anybody else does anything like that.
Oh, I have a couple. I have, I do Cinemark, and it's not even... It's all... Basically, you give $12 or $11.90 a month, and you get a free movie ticket, but then you also get discounts on tickets, so tickets are cheaper, and then you get 30% off at the snack bar. And then I do Alamo Drafthouse. That's a much better one. That one I pay about just under $22 a month, and I can see a movie every day. And so that I go all the time. And then for the summer, we have in Austin, we have the Paramount Theater. It's one of these 100-year-old, like one giant room with an organ in it. And they have what they call their Flixsticks, where you do, I think, $90 and you get 10. So I bought a couple of those. So I think I bought $180 and I got 20 movie tickets. And those are all, I'm going to see like Dial M for Murder and Rope and North by Northwest and Chinatown and like the all kind of the classics. Tomorrow night we're going to go see Superman 2. So But yeah, so those are the three. I used to have, what was the one from years ago where you could just go to any theater anytime?
Movie Pass.
I had Movie Pass.
Movie Pass
that
was the best
great.
summer of my life.
That was great.
I abused that system so much.
Yeah, but I think think Movie Pass was sort of like a part of the cause of like the situation we're in today.
Movie Pass was great for us. It was bad for the theaters, and it kind of started the ball rolling. But
right.
I think the bottom line though is Hollywood has to do something, because if they don't, then moviegoing is going to turn into like the opera, where a handful of people that can afford it are going to spend like $100 or more on a ticket. It'll be this rare occasion to go see like an actual movie on a big screen. And then like operas, even though tickets cost $100 and something each, they still need these huge public subsidies and private subsidies to survive. And that's what cinema is going to be, or moviegoing. It's going to be, there'll be a handful of theater. Every big city might have one big theater. And once every year, you'll pay a big price and go in there and see one movie, and that'll be like your big. And I don't want that. As you guys know, I go to the movies a lot. I would never, we've already lost bookstores, we've lost video stores, we've more or less lost record stores. You still have like vinyl stores, but the idea of going to buy music is not, and I don't want to lose theaters too. So
yeah, I mean, I feel bad for we forget about the average American, middle America. They have one movie theater in their town, and those are closing, every other week.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, even like a mid-sized city, me and Tony are both from St. Louis, and St. Louis is a city that it has basically the big chains. There's like a regional chain in Marcus, which used to be Warenberg, and then there is AMC, and then there was 2 independent theaters, and one of those closed and is now a church. And then so there's now one independent theater in the whole city that shows stuff that doesn't show at the big chains. And those big chains, even though I assume are seeing some declining attendance, which is why they're replacing all the seats with the version. There's no auditoriums that hold 200 people anymore. There's auditoriums that hold 50 people in triple size seats.
Because of those recliners.
They can sell them out easier that way. And charge a little extra.
Austin has got you guys are in LA, so you probably have the best theater system in the country, maybe New York. But Austin is okay. Austin we have, because we got the Alamos here. We got I think 5 or 6 Alamos. We got AMC and Cinemark and Regal. And then Cinemark, actually, what I like is they tend to have, like I saw North by Northwest at Cinemark last week. They've been doing the Studio Ghibli films. So they'll do sort of some kind of more art house repertory type of things. But we don't, other than the Paramount, we don't have too many. I don't know if there's any just total, like, legit independent theaters here. We have the Austin Film Society, but that's kind of, that's more towards the opera model. You've got to, like, spend a lot. It's kind of like, it's a very different experience. It's like seeing a movie with an opera crowd, because it's a lot of older people that are, it's just a very different vibe. But there's nothing here like where we saw the movie when I was in LA, the New Beverly. Yeah, there's nothing like that. So
I mean, from my own personal experience, like right now is like a boom for repertory theaters. The Vista Theater that just was renovated by Tarantino. I mean, this is like probably the most gorgeous theater I've been to, like, ever, and like perfect seating everywhere. And I have A-list. I have the opportunity to go 3 times a week to see a movie, and I'm choosing to go spend money, like extra money, to go see these old movies, these repertory movies, these movies like on film. Oh yeah.
When I lived in
LA, they're all
like
sold out,
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is when I go to the Alamo, every time I see an older film, I saw Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, I saw The Apartment, like these theaters, like they're sold out. They're showing Hollywood 90028 this month. And I told my buddy, I was like, you guys better get tickets right now. I said, they went on sale today. It'll be, and sure enough, it was a couple seats in the front left a couple days later. So you can sell out old movies. It's just, I think theaters are scared to, I don't know.
Well, we had the Twitter guys list of. I wrote down what you were saying. The Twitter guys list of what's wrong, right? And I do think there is some truth to them, because I'm thinking about myself here, and I don't have the subscriptions to any of the theaters, and so for me, minimum it's going to be about $30 to go see something. If I'm going to suffer the indignities of going to the AMC, which is a terrible experience because there's 90 minutes of trailers. And, there's some guy pulling his shoes off in the front. So, for me, it's the idea that the movies are bad. That's not really true. But that said, that I'm not going to go through the $30 plus having an annoying experience to see something that kind of looks like streaming slop to me, you know? Something that looks like, I'm like, oh, this is like a made-for-TV movie that they're just putting out. Because it all just kind of looks like, I don't know what the, term for it would be, but it's just like that look that all the streaming stuff has. Where I'm like, okay, this feels like it was made kind of maybe on the cheap, even if they spent a bunch of money on it. It kind of looks like they did. It's very by the book, kind of cut and dry, Yep, it's going to be 2 angles, and we're just going to go back and forth, and that's dialogue, that type of thing. I'm like, that is truly the type of thing that I'm like, this would be perfectly lovely to watch on a TV.
Sure, sure.
It's not worth the extra step of going to the theater. So I do think, to an extent, having more unique options is going to just kind of have, even for like somebody who enjoys going to see movies, is just going to motivate them that little bit more.
Yeah. Now let me interrupt you though. So how do you think what you said though, because like you like, you have, I presumably have good taste, you like good movies. Do you think that the average person sees it the way, like, do you think, my belief is most people would see that movie like, the masses, right? They would look and say, it's a great movie. Things blew up. The hero saved the damsel in distress, whatever. And like, I think there's always been, now, I'm the same way. I'd rather watch that on streaming. But I feel like those kind of movies used to fill theaters because most people like that. They want simple. They don't want to think. They want just simple action on the screen. And these are the people even though like I don't go see those kind of blockbuster films too much, I feel like these are the people we need to get back into theaters. I think the three of us, if we see that they're going to show a couple Alfred Hitchcock films, we'd probably go out of our way to go see that. But there'll be less of that if those theaters can't also bring in the big bucks with the Ryan Reynolds movies and the Tom Cruise movies. And so I think I'm less worried about the three of us we'll always go to the movies given the chance. I think, because everything you said is totally true. The 2 angles, the dialogue, yeah. But I remember seeing movies like that in the 80s. Like there have always been those kind of crappy movies. We need those movies to get people in the theaters again.
But I do think though I do agree that the average kind of like it feels elitist to be like the average dumb guy audience. But
I know I hate when I say it too, but I don't know how else to say it. Like
right, yeah, but like the middle of the road movie consumer who's just like you're the guy in high school who was the movie guy who had just liked Tom Cruise or whatever, right?
Yeah,
I think that. Yes, those guys do they're like, okay, cool, I want to see some shit blow up. I want to see, the good guy beat the bad guy at the end and stuff. I do think that that's true, but I also think that people appreciate novelty, and I do think the sameness of things pushes them away a little bit. It's like, I feel like I've already seen this type of movie a bunch of times. I want to see something at least a little flashy in a way that surprises me.
Maybe, but why did it never push them away before? Like, why were they going to the movies, the past 100+ years of movies?
To an extent, but
I think there used to be, okay, as much as I love the Marvel movies, those have been the mainstream of tentpole blockbusters for a whole section of the industry. And those need to be fitting in with more or less within style of this cinematic universe in that studio. That has had a sort of trickle effect throughout the rest of the industry because of that model of success that they've had. Whereas, I mean, I guess a clear example towards that like novelty that maybe David you were talking about are movies like Oppenheimer and Barbie, very both visually, distinct movies in their own way, and people showed up for those movies. I think really what I've heard, and I like talking to like normal people that like maybe they don't like the movies that I like, or maybe they have these criticisms of like movie people that are like reflected of me, but I still am like, oh, that's interesting. I can't like wait to hear more about like your view. What it comes down to, these people that don't know much about like cinematic technique, they still want like the story. They still want like a good surprise and something that they haven't really seen before, but presented in like, well, I mean, they want a story that they know and is good, but presented in a new way. So I think what Hollywood has been doing though is they've been like making more formulaic movies, and since they're putting so much money to each one of those movies, they don't have as much of a variety. Whereas back in the day, I think those like formulaic movies, like let's say the Star Wars knockoffs or whatever, those would be like lower budgeted, and like they could kind of produce a lot of those on the side, and people would be like, oh, I'll just go see it. Like,
but that's what I mean. They kept going to see them. Like those movies, like people, and I get it, there's other things to do with your time now. Maybe the movies itself has been kind of replaced by other things, but it always seems to me that for as long as I've been going to the movies, lousy movies have, like if you look at the top movies of the year for the like past 50 years, it's rare that once in a while something great sneaks in there, but usually the movies that sell a lot of tickets and top the charts, they aren't really the best. They're pretty mediocre movies. Like the best movies, at least in my mind, often don't do that well. And like I don't think that suddenly audiences have become more discerning. I don't think that in the past 4 or 5 years suddenly people are like, oh, I'm tired of these formulaic, repetitive action films. Because if that was the case, they'd all be going to see The Holdovers or American Fiction. Those would have been selling out, or the Marlowe, or I think that, I don't know. I think that the mainstream audiences still want those kind of mainstream movies. It's just they're watching them at home now.
I think you're right. I think the other part of that problem though is that there's the marketing, and I know this from like marketing people that are in the industry. They are not reaching the audience that they're intended to. There's some disconnect between the marketing reaching like the audience that they should. Like people didn't even know the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movie was out. People didn't know Fall Guy was out. Like,
God, how did that? I felt like I was bombarded with commercials, and everywhere I turned, I saw that. But I guess it depends if they're watching TV or not.
Oh, no, yeah. I also will say is that the marketing doesn't help with the sameness thing, where it's the movies coming out of the Hollywood system feel kind of boring, because if you watch it, every trailer is a pop song slowed down with dramatic echoes on it, and then it goes boom, 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 and then there's studio logos, and then like they time some gunshots to the beats of the song. It's every trailer is cut in this identical style, so it's like those marketing, and then every poster is like 5 heads coming out of each other, and maybe a guy jumping out of a car at the bottom of the frame, and the marketing materials make them all feel so related to each other that there's not this distinct. Very few movies feel like it's going to be this unique event that feels different. And that's why I feel like we're not getting the bigger movies in many ways. But then also those mid-level movies, those Fall Guy, I think is the example everyone's thinking about right now, because it seems to have all the makings of a mid-budget hit, and just flopped. And I think that all just kind of gets lost in the shuffle with a plethora of competition, and a sense of, I think movies feel like they should be an event to most people right now. I think people, because as you were saying, Greg, with maybe it's the laziness, is the sense that people want an excuse to want a reason to leave the house, you know? And I think that the mid-budget stuff just doesn't have the juice to get people going to an extent. And part of that's in the marketing.
I think what you guys both said ties together, and you just kind of tied it together yourself. I think that, like, if you look at last year, the two films that got people out were Barbie and Oppenheimer. And I think they were marketed differently than movies tend to be. Barbie had that very bright pink, like it was, they made sure you understood this wasn't your typical movie. I didn't actually like the movie, but I think most people did, and it certainly got people's attention. And then Oppenheimer too. Oppenheimer was marketed as kind of more of an event. Like, I went to see it in 70 millimeter because it was, and I think that's become kind of the new norm, where either marketing, laziness, combination of the two. Seems like every year now there's, I think it was the Top Gun movie the year before that, the Spider-Man No Way Home. You have 1, 2, maybe 3 movies that kind of capture the zeitgeist, and it becomes like the thing to do, where everybody's like, hey, did you see Barbenheimer yet? No. And like, everyone goes to the theater because that's what people are doing. Whereas it used to be you just went to the movies because that's what you did all the time. That's where you went on dates. That's where you went with friends. It's gotten now where it's like you stream your movies and you pick 1 or 2 that everyone else is seeing because you're following the herd. And I think marketing is what helps people pick. And I don't have, what's been this year so far? Like, was maybe Dune 2?
I was gonna say Dune would be the big one.
I would say kind of a example, like Civil War is kind of a good mid-budget example, where it's like a very high concept idea that everyone was like, oh, Civil War, like, oh, that movie's gonna be crazy. And it was at a mid-budget, so it could make its money back. I mean, a high, 80 million is like, relatively low for a big, well, that's like A24's biggest movies that they need to like start making these in order to fund smaller movies. But still, it was like, okay, high concept. I know Civil War. I know what I'm going to get into. But then they can kind of make this sort of art house movie. And, whether people like it or not, that's a little bit, up to them. But like, it got people to go see it.
To an extent, but I think I'm looking at the box office. It made globally 114 million, which probably doesn't break even for that movie.
Yeah, with marketing costs.
If it cost
maybe
80
not
million,
with the marketing.
Because a lot of those overseas tickets, they don't get as much of that. So, but yeah, I think that one too. I think it was a little bit of a. Did you guys see it?
I did not see it.
I saw it.
I went to see it, and it was not what I expected. It was marketed almost like Independence Day, or like an action. I thought it was gonna be like a Civil War movie, but really, it's just like kind of a character study of these 3 veteran photojournalists that are embedded. Like, we never find out why there's a war. We don't know what the sides like. They did. Alex Garland, I think, is the director. He did a great job of keeping something that could have been really political, it's just utterly apolitical. Like, you could go to that. I thought it was going to be like either Trump is awesome or Biden's. I thought it was going to be one. But it was really just like this generic president who you don't know is political. And so, yeah, I enjoyed it. But I think maybe some people were expecting something more of an action movie out of Civil War, and they got kind of like a drama. But I don't know if I can think of anything. I think Wolverine or whatever, Deadpool and Wolverine might be the first big one we get.
But Dune 2 was pretty big. I think Godzilla and Kong was pretty big.
Oh, that was Godzilla. That's the one. I knew there was something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking through a list of it, but there is a lot of stuff that has just come and gone this year. I'm just looking through the list here. It's like the new Ghostbusters kind of came and went. The Bob Marley biopic kind of came and went.
I'm looking at Ghostbusters at 200 million is not bad, for nowadays. But yeah,
people
Dune,
right
Godzilla.
now are kind of touting Furiosa as a big flop, which, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's more like a clickbaity thing. Like, it is a flop, but like Mad Max is kind of like a weird niche concept anyway.
I think, Mad Max movies never do well. I feel like Fury Road didn't make that much. I know the original Mad Max, I think until Blair Witch, it had the record of like highest like percentage profit because it cost so little to make. But it made like $9 million. Like, it made very little comparatively, but just since it cost, $20 to make it was this huge profit. But yeah, Mad Max has never, even though it's like a well-known property, it's never put butts in seats.
I think Joker 2 will probably do well.
Oh, Joker 2 is, yeah.
I think Joker 2 might flop too. I feel like that's the kind of thing that people are going to be kind of scared to go see. It's a musical. It's kind of dark. Like
I forgot the musical thing. Yeah.
I forgot that it's a musical.
I hope it does well. I think the first one was great, but
I kind of wanted to ask you both a question, because Greg, you kind of brought it up, was like, you said that, people are going to go do other things and see other things. And, in my experience, people are hungry for like concerts. They're hungry to go to Disneyland. They want to go see like something that they can physically go to and have an experience. And they're willing to pay a lot of money for the snacks. They're willing to pay a lot for like merch and stuff. How do we
Swift.
Yeah, Taylor Swift. I mean,
though.
Her movie was
is
amazing.
Flying to London to see Taylor Swift.
Yeah, my friend is also doing that.
But like people showed up for her movie because it was like a different aspect of that, going to that concert. So how do we get people to come back to the movie theaters and treat that experience in a way that reflects the cost and the effort to go?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I made a list of things that I think we could do. Yeah. One thing I didn't put on the list, but you just said it. I think they probably could incorporate more, do like, instead of like Taylor Swift, was that a movie? Like they made a concert movie and showed it, or was that just a live feed of a concert? Okay. Because I think perhaps if people want, like if they had, I wouldn't go, if Taylor Swift was playing in my living room, I'd go in the bedroom. But like if some people, like if they had that concert in London that my buddy Jordan's going to, if that was being broadcast at a Cinemark, you might be able to get people to pay to go in and sit in Cinemark, or maybe even stand and dance in a Cinemark or whatever theater. And like I once went to see a heavyweight boxing match at a movie theater. They might be able to do more live sporting events, that like these pay-per-view sports, pay-per-view concerts that could probably get people just to generate revenue. But when I was thinking of this, the very first thought I had was go back kind of to the way things started, go back to the 30s and 40s. They used to have, when moviegoing was an experience, where you would sit down and they'd show like a Buck Rogers episode, and they'd show a cartoon and a newsreel and a couple of movies. When I started thinking about, the thing that jumped out at me were those old serials. I showed my sons the old Captain Marvel from the 40s, and they really got into it. And I showed them Flash Gordon with Buster Crabbe, and they got into that. What if they had Wes Anderson, Martin Scorsese, like legit directors direct maybe like a 10 episode, 15-minute prep. So like, 150 minutes, like not some massive 50-hour thing, but just have like a 10 episode, 15-minute per episode serial that is only in theaters. And when you go that week, for 1 week, that episode runs and then it's gone. Maybe a couple of years later they sell it or they stream it, but it's like, you remember how like True Detective caught on and Game of Thrones people would like all be in front of the TV when the Perry Mason thing came. Like there were these shows that kind of captured that zeitgeist. If people are talking like, hey, did you see the, David Fincher, he's doing that, his serial's out, it's starting this week, and you have to go to the movies that once that week or you don't get that episode. And just, get people to commit to see it. Maybe, here's something else what I was thinking. You're probably not old enough to remember this, but when the Phantom Menace, when the trailer came out, people went to the movies, because there was no streaming yet. There was no, I don't think YouTube existed. It might take you an hour to download a file online. People went to the movies, bought a movie ticket, watched the trailer, left. Thousands of people did that. Like there were certain movies that they'll talk about, like, the ticket sales for like whatever this crazy movie was like doubled what it should have been, just because they were willing to pay $8 to watch that trailer. I think if you knew that your favorite director, or whatever, just like a quality director, had a little short thing that was every week you went to catch an episode, I think people would go. I think that would capture it. It would get the attention again. It would become a thing. People would talk about it.
It would just be waiting, 35 minutes for all those trailers.
Yeah, I was going to. Yeah, I've timed it. It's almost always to the minute, 25 minutes of adverts, trailers before the movie starts. If it's a 7:00 showing, 7:26, whatever the logo goes up when they start the movie. They definitely need to shorten that.
That's too much. There was a commercial break in the trailers recently. We got an M&M's ad between two
I've
of
seen
the
that,
trailers.
yeah. I've seen those trailers.
Come on, man.
Well, the new Coca-Cola ad is a whole short film, and everyone's always like, "Oh!" Like everyone, like when I saw Furiosa,
especially once you've seen
there
it
were
once,
so many people just going like, "Ah!" Like start the movie, like.
Yeah. But that was my first idea: is let's have some kind of, and it doesn't have to be like Buck Rogers. These don't have to be like superheroes and space adventures. Just something where a director is just given carte blanche. They tell Martin Scorsese, "You're going to do what he can do, gangsters. He can whatever he feels like doing," and just get, every 10 weeks you bring in a new one and just have these directors making something that I think that would bring people in.
Yeah, you just get episodes of something.
Yeah, you get an episode. Yeah,
but you're gonna miss one if you don't go see a movie this month. Yeah,
you could do it old school style where everyone ends on a cliffhanger, or you can just however you want to do it. It's your film, and when if I think Tarantino's done, but if Tarantino did it, he could have his where whatever he does, and when Noah Baumbach, whoever they've got.
I'm imagining like The Mandalorian, instead of like those 45-minute long episodes, they'd be like 15-minute, 20-minute episodes in front of the
Get
movies.
Jon Favreau.
People would go.
Actually, I was about to think that is actually maybe a way this could work. Is you get you do it with some of the franchise stuff. Is it's like
they could do that however they want to do it.
If you see something, if you see every Disney movie this year, you're gonna get a whole separate Mandalorian story that you're not gonna get on Disney Plus.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of those MCU, like I love most of the MCU movies, but a lot of their TV shows have been terrible. And I think they could have,
it's all filler.
Yeah, if like Moon Knight could have been shortened to like 15-minute blocks, I think they would have had something.
The Obi-Wan show.
Yeah, Obi-Wan, that could have been so much better if they just tightened it up. But I think they felt like they had to drag it out to fill those blocks of time.
Well, they have to drag it out so people feel like their subscription is worth it, and they keep subscribing another month.
Yeah. But this is your like free add-on to the movie. You're going to go see The Fall Guy, you're going to get a 15-minute Greta Gerwig serial. Other thing I was thinking is we mentioned this before, but significantly lengthen the time. If after the theater, make people wait a year to watch it on stream, and crack down on. I mean, piracy is a little easier because most people don't know how to pirate movies. Like everybody knows how to download songs for free, but it's a small percentage of people that are pirating movies. I think it's not easy to watch a movie the way it's easy to steal a song. But I still think they could crack down on piracy. I know that if you put something on YouTube or Facebook, within an instant, Sony will block it if it's their copyrighted song. So there's got to be some way that an algorithm or AI could target these things and shut down these pirating sites. But I don't know that piracy is even that big of an issue. I think
it's getting worse. But it used to be, it actually declined pretty sharply when all the streaming services came out because they gave people something easier than pirating stuff. But now, because there's too many streaming services, people are like, screw this, I'm not going to sign up to 10 streaming services. I'll sign up to the 2 that have the most stuff I like, and then I'll just grab the 2 or 3 things I'm interested in from the other ones.
Yeah. But so me, I guess maybe it's just me, but I don't even know anymore how to, like I used to know how to, there's certain torrent sites, but I've kind of lost track of that. Maybe it's easier than I think, but even if piracy does suck away some of it, I think if they made it, if it was a year before The Fall Guy came into to stream, I think a lot more people would have gone to see The Fall Guy. Because I think it also gives, that's the other thing too, is it used to be like movies came out and they stayed in theaters for a while. And a lot of them started, like Star Wars is the perfect example. Like it was not an instant hit. It was in the first weekend, I think in like about 20 theaters, and it got a little buzz and they expanded it. When I remember this because it came out, I saw it in this initial theatrical run. Even though it came out May 25th, it wasn't until July that it was in wide release, and that's when that's when it really became a phenomenon. I mean, good luck keeping a movie in the theater 6 weeks waiting for it to find an audience. But if you kept these things in there longer, I think it gives word. Like I saw Fall Guy; it was really good, and I told friends, and they went and saw it, and then it was probably done. It's probably not even there, or it's probably like almost out of the theaters by now, or maybe ready to stream by now.
Numbers are going down. Yeah.
Yeah, like keep movies in theaters longer, make people wait to stream. And then the last idea I have is kind of like not fully fleshed out. I saw this tweet, not about movies, but somebody says, I found a very cool bookstore in Tokyo. Each square on the bookshelves is rented to a different person. And these are to customers. The renters are free to curate and sell whatever books they want on their shelf space. So it's like they aren't selling their own books. It's like you get to go decide what books the bookstore is selling on that shelf. You could probably do something. I don't know exactly how you do it because it's not like a bookstore where you could sell 1 million movies at once, but you could possibly have like one theater that people can purchase the right to like show, like, you know, there's say 6 showings a day, you know, times a month. Like each month you pay and you can pick, it's going to be Double Indemnity today at noon, or like I don't know how that would work in terms of the licensing, but I think something along those lines. If you could let customers kind of curate a theater where they could have some say in what was showing. So
I think some movie theaters have been doing that since the pandemic. I don't know how popular it is, but I know that is a thing you can do.
Yeah. So those were my ideas. That's how I would. If I read the
speaking, you have the trouble of you can't show them to the public. You can rent stuff and show whatever you want to your friends, but you can't sell tickets to it.
But the theater can. I couldn't. Like if you told the theater, I want to see whatever the Pulp Fiction, the theater could go out and they'd have to get it.
They'd have to go license it from the studio, and there'd be some contracts. But if you just basically have a stock contract that you slap a name on, and you know, that could be something.
Well, it would be something like, you know, whoever you and your party are paying to rent the space, whatever you project, you're not paying tickets for the movie that's projecting.
Well, yeah, but the way this is,
if you wanted to do it that, if you wanted to do it so that the public could go.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is more like if I just decided like, hey, I want this theater to show, you know, The Fall Guy at 5:00, so they would, because it was my turn to pick, and you said I want them to show Titanic at 7:00, and they would, and then it wouldn't be like a last minute thing. They'd announce it in advance, and then hopefully people would buy tickets. So it'd just be like that theater showing Titanic that night, and whoever wants to buy a ticket would go buy a ticket and see Titanic.
I'll have to look into it more, but I know that some things like this do exist. I think some theaters are like have a selection at least of movies, like a list, like here we have the right to show these. And
yeah,
because I'll see sometimes, like very rarely, but I'll see sometimes like, oh, this random movie screening in this AMC at this time. I think this is like someone just like was like, hey, I want that to be playing, like Ghostbusters or something, you know. But I'll have to look more into that.
Yeah, it may not be practical, but it was just when I saw that tweet, I was just thinking, God, there's got to be a way to like extrapolate that out to cinema. And it's not as simple because, like, you know, bookstores have thousands of books, and it's just about where they're putting those books.
But David, did you have any ideas about
how to save moviegoing?
Get people into the
save the theatrical experience.
The theatrical experience.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the cost thing does keep people away, whether or not it's actually prohibitively expensive. I think people have this feeling that it's this very expensive thing to do. And so I think there could be a thing with those like mid-budget kind of movies, you know. What if the tickets are cheaper for movies that are lower budget? Like if you want to go see, you know, some Godzilla vs. Kong, you know, $300 million movie, then you're paying full price. You want to see the Avengers, you're paying full price. But if you want to see something like, you know, what was that one that just came out? Anyone But You. If you want to see that, you know, something that probably didn't cost that much to make and is kind of in a genre that has a dedicated fan base. You know, the romantic comedy fans do go crazy for it. I think something like that, if you just had a reduced ticket price for something that is a little lower budget, I think people are more... And part of this, too, you just got to get the word out to people that this is the case, is that just... It kind of create a reputation for, well, if you want to see, you know, the big blockbusters, that's one thing. But if you want to see, it's like the equivalent of like going to a Broadway show versus going to your like local community theater almost to an extent. Is it's like it's going to be a much more reasonable price to see that.
Yeah, it's like seeing Taylor Swift versus,
Right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's a great idea.
I think it makes sense too because, well, especially nowadays, maybe it wouldn't work. Maybe it wouldn't be that feasible like 10 years ago. But like nowadays, it's like, I mean, what does the box office even mean anymore when like they're not reporting the viewership of streaming? How exactly does A-list figure into the, box office? I know that there's some allotment of like the money that is, calculated into how many seats. I I don't know how transparent that is, but like I think your idea would make a lot of sense nowadays because like I mean you're already, if you have your brand new movie available to stream for $25, that's one movie ticket here, but you can have your friends over, then they're already losing that money. But if you were like, okay, everyone pays $5 to go see it in the theater, maybe they'd be like, oh well, let's just go to the theater, $5, why not?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And especially now that there's a sign, because it used to be, I think people then they'd all buy the ticket to the romantic comedy, they'd sneak into Godzilla, but now that we have assigned seats, it's harder to do that.
Yeah.
There will still be some, because if the movie's not sold out, they could just find an empty seat.
There's always somebody who tries it.
Yeah. But honestly, like, they're still buying a ticket, so at least, and if they're taking a seat that wasn't sold to Godzilla, I mean, I don't know. Like maybe they're losing something if there was like the opportunity cost of that guy buying the Godzilla ticket. But
I would just make sure that contracts would be in place for the filmmakers and all those people involved in the production, which is a whole nother thing now with the strikes. And,
everybody's getting paid a hell of a lot less.
Right. Yeah. But if they're redoing those contracts, might as well try to figure out how to
something in the
change the movie pricing.
Yeah, that was like the big. I think the wait to stream is a huge thing. I think like back in the day, there is a lot of stuff where I remember just conversations with like my dad or whatever when I was a kid of like asking is this one to wait for? We had the Netflix DVD, so it was like wait for Netflix meant something a little different at the time. But it was like, is this one we wait to rent, or is this one we go see in theaters? Yeah. Because the actual cost of waiting to rent was bigger, He's like, man, I'm not gonna be plugged in. I'm not gonna know, what happens in this until, until whenever the DVD comes out. So I think waiting to stream is a big one.
Yeah, more than anything, I think that would be the simplest fix. That just. If people had to wait, people would start going to the movies again. And I think the sooner you do it, the better, because you've got to retrain people to go.
Yeah, there's always going to be like a period of time. Because like the other thing, with like, I was thinking about like, with all the IP stuff, I think it is kind of drying up. People are losing interest in Marvel, and the new bet seems to be video game movies. It seems like that we're going to get a lot of that because Mario did really well and the Last of Us TV show did really well. I think that's going to be the next, big IP push.
Yeah.
But, if you wanted to get rid of all the IP stuff or, drastically reduce it, there would still be a period of time where there's just going to be stuff that bombs because their tastes are not akin to the new thing that's going on. And that's going to be true, though, with any major change to the process. And the question is whether the companies, both studios and distributors, can absorb that period of time where they're just going to have to kind of power through a period of reduced money and like reduced profit to get to a version where they can probably have a bigger and more expansive model in the future. And I don't know. I'd have to see their books or whatever to know. But
well, what about you, Antonio? How are you going to save cinema?
I mean, I agree with your points as far as like once the people are in, the theater and like what kind of content they're watching, getting rid of like the trailers in some extent. I really like all that stuff. I think a big thing that I've thought about. I did like a whole project on this kind of in college, and in my research then, this was before the pandemic and where streaming ended up, there was already the trends that are happening now kind of were being calculated back then. It was just like expedited. But a big thing in my research that I saw was that people really enjoy the ambience and the attention to detail of just the theaters themselves, and like the presentation of everything leading up before the movie does a lot as far as psychologically your enjoyment of what you're seeing. So, remodeling movie theaters to be a little bit more sleek and like luxurious in a way, making things more comfortable, kind of maybe having deals as far as like your concessions included in some sort of pricing point that you're having, and like maybe having lounges. I mean, I know movie theaters have these things now, but it's not fully thought out, I don't think. Like, making the cinema like more of a place, and the experience of going there worth that price. Like in Mexico, they have the Cineteca Nacional, which is like the national cinematheque, and it's a whole building. It's like there's like kind of grass around it, and there's like a nice structure. There's like a bookstore, some other exhibits like museum areas, and then there's like the screens throughout the spot, and then it's also kind of like a government like restoration building. So it's like this whole area, but like people just go there and just hang out. They sit in the grass with their dogs. They have like outside screenings. They also have the movies inside, and I mean that's funded by the government, and it's a huge success. So I'd love to see more things like that, here in the States, if not like in different cities, because it's just you walk in there and you're kind of just impressed by the architecture and kind of the quality of service you're getting. So maybe they'll have to reduce the number of theaters that they have in order to do this, but I think it would go a long way.
No, I was going to say that harkens back kind of to the origins of moviegoing. There's a reason they built them as these big ornate movie palaces in silent era and early 30s. It was this way for essentially it's like the big theatrical, the opera or whatever, right, was kind of reserved for the upper class of society, and the movie palace was kind of a working class way to feel like you were participating in this big important cultural object by making the theaters architecturally and culturally interesting places. You have this way that you make the audience members feel special, and it feels like they're doing something special that maybe they don't get to do, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I'm always happier in like a big, beautiful theater. These old ornate ones that have the gilded, it just everything like in Oakland there was one where they had like the proper lounges where you go sit in the lounge, and even the restrooms were amazing. It was like a palace, a movie palace, and I think that would bring people out there. I love the idea of the sitting in the grass outside and the movies outside. I think one of the beauties of movies is it's a communal experience, and I think the more you can build upon that and remind people of that, the better. I think that's one of the main things we're losing. We just every day, not just with movies, with everything in our society, with like people used to just go sit in coffee shops and go to bookstores, and you used to do more things out in the public, and you met people that way, and you enjoyed things. And I think also like, so with streaming, you lose something. Like when everybody watches a movie at not the same time exactly, like with Barbie and Oppenheimer last year, we all kind of saw it at the same time, so we were all talking about it at the same time. Whereas with streaming, everything is disjointed and there's no communal sense at all. So maybe I'm finally getting around to watching Dune, but you're going to watch Godzilla, and it's like there's no conversation there. TV and radio, we lost it already. Like it used to, like there's people I'll meet today, like in modern life, we both came from the same, from the Bay Area, and we'll talk about how like, oh yeah, 40 years ago, I remember the night that this movie was shown on TV. Like we at the exact same time and space, we were watching that same channel. And when everybody was the next day at school or the next day at work, you would talk about the show you saw last night and everybody talked about it, or the movie you saw last night, everybody talked about it. But now you can't because, you know, I haven't seen the new episode of whatever, don't spoil it. And I think it tears society apart. I think there's less binding us when we're all at home alone doing our own thing. The more we can bring people together, I personally don't think it's a coincidence that there's so much more strife and disagreement now than ever. Like, people can't even have conversations about topics without, you know, fighting. Whereas they used to be able to just, at least if they disagreed, they could still talk about it. And I think it's because we're never together. We're never having conversations about anything. So we aren't learning how to socialize. So yeah, if we can just fill a room full of strangers and get them laughing at the same time and cringing at the same time and cheering at the same time, I'm all for it.
Yeah, there was part of the study that in my research was like they had sort of a mock movie theater experience where, like, I think they put like a laptop screen or a phone screen with a movie, but then they built a little like toy cinema around it with like little fake people's heads, and like it was kind of, you know, just, it was small, but that gave somebody more enjoyment than just straight up watching it off their phone, because it was like a simulated environment of, like, you know, maybe to your point, of a collective experience, where that, you know, you have these gimmicks like 3D, 4DX and stuff. Those things don't do anything, but like having the sort of experience with other people engaged in the movies goes a long way.
Yeah, and even with the streaming era here and stuff, I think that is a crucial part of movie watching, is that social experience. Because I remember, again, early pandemic, me and like two of my friends who hadn't been able to see each other in a couple of weeks were like making it a point to all go to, you know, YouTube and all hit play at the same time on the same, you know, movie that we were all watching. We were all watching the John Boyes documentary History of the Seattle Mariners together, which is like 3.5 hours long and great. But we were all making sure, we're all like, okay, we can't watch part one. It's on separate days. You know, we all got to watch them together so that we would have that communal experience. And it makes the experience that much better in terms of, it's just, you have something to talk to other people about, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I remember, during the pandemic, a lot of times on Twitch, there'd be somebody showing a movie. In fact, I did it a couple times where I would just screen share a movie and 30, 40 of us would just sit and watch the same movie together all over the world in different houses. But there's something about, because you want to share it. Like even with these, I told you I bought a bunch of tickets to those films at the Paramount Theater. You know, I've been texting my friends, like, here's the movies, who wants to go see? And I know nobody's going to see that many. I'm kind of crazy, but like, I'm just like, you know, pick one. We'll watch it. You know, I was I on Facebook. I don't know if are we linked on. We might be linked on Facebook, but you can on Facebook. I posted a screenshot of all, whatever it is, 2019, however movies I'm seeing. I post it all up there. So I'm always trying to get, because you want to talk about it. You want to see it, and even if you're not going to turn and like, because like on one hand, like there's nothing more solitary. You go to a movie, like you're not supposed to pull out your phone. You're not supposed to talk. You're supposed to just, you immerse yourself in the screen, but you know that person is with you and you know you're going to talk about it, and you need that.
And you can see how people are reacting to things and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that everything we're saying here shows that this can be saved. Is, I think people do have an inherent desire to share their movie experiences with each other in some form or another. And so I think that this is, I don't know, some sort of statement to the power of the theatrical experience, is that when it's taken away, there is this desire to emulate it in any way possible, to have that shared movie experience.
I'm wondering, you know, it seems like as far as like, you know, what the theaters can do, we have our plan. I'm wondering, kind of going back to, you know, what movies are being made and what is being marketed. How do you guys think that the types of films that are being shown now or produced now could change to get a mass audience.
Okay, so one thing that I hear a lot and I read a lot is about the politics being forced into movies. And like I noticed that, like I feel like movies definitely have there's a lot more messaging, and there's a lot more where I feel it's like they make creative choices not because they think it's going to make the movie better, but because it, kind of puts a view forth. And I think maybe, and I get it that like sometimes you want to change the world and cinema's a way to change it, but I think it can be off-putting. And I think maybe they need to focus more on just making great movies and less on trying to force. But then the other side, I think about it like, I feel like there have always, to some extent, been like Hollywood has always kind of had like a political bent to it. So, but it seems like it's on steroids now. So I think, that could be something in terms of the way they're making movies, is just try to focus more on making a great movie and don't care so much about like an underlying, change the world message.
Yeah.
But
for me, it feels like a lot of the time those messages are, what's the word, like inauthentic or sort of just put in because we have to have
it
a
feels
message.
Like pandering, yeah.
Pandering, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas movies, I think, that have a message, but it's sort of hidden within, subtext of the film, and the film itself is sort of serving more as entertainment or fantasy. Those elements are there reinforcing the story, but it's not being hammered into the audience's head.
A great director can entertain you and make you think at the same time. A hack will just beat you over the head with it and say, listen to me. And it's like, I just want to see the hero save the day. I don't need to, whatever, think about complex gender politics or something. I just want, make the stuff explode when it's supposed to explode. I also think that they need to make more, like people are saying all the time, but like there aren't enough of these kind of like mid-budget films for grown-ups. I think it's just...
They all became TV shows.
Yeah, they became TV shows. And I also think that as ticket sales are declining, love it or hate it, it was the blockbusters that were subsidizing those. And now that the blockbusters are losing money, there's no money to give like a Woody Allen or somebody or the next Woody Allen to make that kind of a movie.
I mean, it's sad when, a little bit sad when Martin Scorsese is like still struggling at his age and his, he's a master of film throughout. He's maybe one of the best contemporary American film directors, and he's still having to, raise money through Apple TV, Netflix to fund his movies.
Yeah. Or Francis Ford Coppola. He had to sell how much wine to make his Megalopolis.
Yeah.
That movie is going to be insane.
I really want to see that.
I'm very. I can't tell what it is. Like, it's everything I hear about it sounds insane. Yeah, I think you're right though. Is that it's like First of all, I think there should be some sort of government department set up to give Martin Scorsese $100 million every 5 years to just let him. How many more we got? Come on. But I do think that there's something very sad in seeing somebody like David Lynch completely fail to be able to get funding for any projects. And as per, I was thinking about it, is what we were saying about the political aspect. I don't know. It's like, I have no issue with politics in a movie. A lot of movies I like are very political. But what I don't like is when a character turns to the camera and is like, this is exactly what I believe. Unless it's in a Jean-Luc Godard film. It's okay when he does it. But I don't like that. I like it when the filmmaking elements themselves are what are communicating our political stances here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I think, a good director can do that, but I think there's been a shift. And it doesn't bother me as much
about not being understood.
Yeah. I think even if the three of us aren't bothered by it so much, I do think that's something that is keeping a fair amount of people away. Is that because I see that a lot too, where they're like, I'm not going to go to the movies anymore because I don't want to fund these people who just, hate me and everything I stand for. And I'm like, well, I can kind of see that point. Because if it was flipped, it might bother me. Like if the movies all had like this total like message that was the complete, like if every movie was just like this fascist, like, hey, we should, throw all the foreigners out, and women can't vote, and like I was just being every movie I saw, I'd be like, maybe I don't want to see this, So I can see how different people might have. I don't know. Some people they want to be entertained. The movies are where you go so you don't have to think about the world.
Yeah. But yeah, and as to the adult mid-budget movie thing, it's like, there's a world where Mad Men was a movie and not a TV show, and that, I'm glad it was as long as it was, more robust in that case. But I think those are the types of films that would have been made as a movie in the 1960s that wouldn't be made as a movie today. But yeah, exactly. I would love if TV and movies were both very good. But what I was gonna say is, right before we recorded, I revisited Steven Soderbergh's talk at the 2014 San Francisco Film Festival on the state of cinema as it existed 10 years ago now. And
what did he say?
Very interesting that he decries the same exact thing, and blames it pretty solely on the fact that it's easier to make $300 million off of a $100 million movie than it is to make $100 million off of a $10 million movie. And so it's just the math of it. If the only things the studio cares about is raw market optimization, the math of it does lean towards making content slop that they can in some way find reliable.
Maybe part of the trouble is it's no longer, maybe it never was, but I feel like from my study of film history, at least, what little I've done, like it does seem the people that were in the movie industry a long time ago had more of a love of the art of cinema. And now it's all just shareholders and boardrooms. And it's just about whatever the accountant says the bottom line is. Because you kind of, when it's an art, I think you do need to have some sense of, okay, we're going to put out 4 or 5 of these $100 million movies, try to make $1 billion on one, 300 million on the other, whatever. But we owe it to the art to also set aside another $300 million for 10 just well-made movies. And it's just kind of like, it's our debt to the art form. We're making all this money off of film, but we have to kind of perpetuate film at the same time. We have to we can't keep all the money. Some of it has to go back into the art form. Yeah. And
that's the blessing and curse of these tech companies funding the streaming and funding their production companies. It's like you might get a couple of these, hidden gems, but for the most part, they're not concerned about whether the movie even is good or not. They just need that bottom line, like you said.
They don't even call it a
sell
movie.
Off,
they call it content.
Right, it's just content.
Yeah.
Content.
Yeah, they could care less. They would, or they couldn't care. Whatever you're supposed to say. I like they could. I've always felt like they could care less sounds better. I
actually agree with that.
There's a campaign we should just switch it to they could care less, but they could not care less. They don't care at all about anything but the bottom line. In fact, they would probably be willing to just, Apple would let you watch movies for free if you buy a laptop every year or something. Like they just, that it has no.
They're supplementary.
Yeah, they don't care one way or other about cinema, about film, about any of it, about the history of it, or that's always the problem. Whether it's music, anytime it's an art form, and that's why you have to have the NEA to subsidize, opera houses and classical and Shakespeare, and I think the cinemas need, or the Hollywood needs to bear some of that burden. They have to just be like, hey, we have to. It's just we owe it to the founders of this, to the people that created this, and all these from Orson Welles. We owe it to all these people to just every year invest in directors who we don't think are going to make. And once in a while, one of them breaks through. You get the My Big Fat Greek Wedding or whatever. You get these, Amelie or something. But like, I don't know. I think that's part of the trouble, though, is that as these tech companies and shareholders take over, it's less about the art side of it.
Yeah, I was just reading today, Daniel Besner wrote a really good article in Harper's Magazine called The Life and Death of Hollywood that goes into essentially how, since 2008, private equity firms have gobbled up pretty much every major film company, including companies that are competing with each other, creating an effective outside of the Hollywood system monopoly owned by a company like KKR or State Street, where they're invested in, Warner Brothers, Disney, and Universal equally. So they're just like, as long as any of you are doing anything, we will kind of hedge our bets. And then once one of you starts falling apart, we can start melting down the copper that's in the electrical appliances and, call it a day.
I wonder if we're going to see something like another United Artists at some point come up where, actors and directors who just pure passion.
What did I just hear about something like that? Oh, it was well, not that it wasn't anything as grand as that, but it was there was a movie when I lived in LA. I used to be in Westwood all the time. I would sit at Stan's Donuts, and there's that theater right across. I see movies there all the time too, and when they announced they were going to close that theater down, 30 or 40 actors and directors pooled their money and bought the theater to keep it going. But yeah, they should start. That's maybe that's what they need is some. It's probably easier to do today than ever with the way that you don't need film. There's a lot less of a barrier of entry to making movies. I believe, right? You make movies. Like I think it's easier to make a movie in 2024 than it was in 1924. Maybe we need to have more. Like A24, I think is like its own thing, right?
Like the closest to that. I think right now, or
like
Neon.
You could start your movie studio and you start, and like I think that might be, and that could be the direction it goes to, where as these movie theaters are going out of business, people take them over and just start showing their movies, and it might be to the point where if you want to see not A24, B25, whatever. Well, they're in Cincinnati at this theater. That's where that guy, and it's like people are like, this guy's making amazing movies. He's the next Scorsese, but you have to be in downtown Cincinnati to see him. And that might be the whole next wave of just the whole thing blows up and you start again from scratch.
I think it's going to take a lot. I mean, the whole world at this point, I think world cinema in general is doing very well. Like we're seeing, a lot of other parts of the world, their cinema history is a lot younger than America. So they're kind of reaching this point of breaking through more to the larger cinema space, but there's still such a standard set for that, like Hollywood, like this is the goal. Like even when I was in Mexico and getting the read on the film industry there, these filmmakers there, their ultimate goal is to come to America to make movies. Where my perception of it is like, well, why don't you just change the movie industry here? Why don't you just stay here and do something different? Like, but that Hollywood model has worked in the past, so that's what everyone is like striving to. So I think it's going to take some sort of like readjustment of that idea.
Yeah, I do agree. World cinema is, I think, at a peak right now. It is first of all, just by sheer number, we have more movies than ever before being made. But in terms of quality and increasingly audience, they are, for the first time, more Americans are willing to watch movies with subtitles.
Like Godzilla -1.
Exactly. It's not all of them, but it is a bigger number than probably ever before. And I think potentially something coming in and really finding mainstream success from completely outside of the Hollywood system might cause some sort of recalculation within that system of like, oh shit, this is something that is very much not something we are set up to compete against. In the same way that like RRR honestly is like a huge breakthrough success.
Yeah, that's America. What you need is you need something to break through, and like you just be super successful, like these Korean movies, like Parasite, and like I think, now there's the Squid Game. I think once one of them does, everybody starts scrambling to copy it and catch on. I think maybe there will be more like, hey, if our movies aren't selling, maybe we can just start putting Korean movies, Brazilian movies, Indian movies, like, maybe we can start getting American audiences to see those, because I get it. It kind of becomes, it's like that everybody watch Squid Games. Maybe you get, some Korean film that catches on. Everybody goes to the theater and sees that, and that makes $1 billion. But maybe it will be world cinema.
I mean, it's a tricky thing because for America, it's all been, studios and, relatively independent. And a lot of other countries, there's a lot of national incentive and government ties to the film industry. So, it's tricky because it's like, well, we wouldn't really want that for America, but at the same time, who else is going to like help in this sort of preservation or funding for artists for the sake of art? There's a fine line between the profit and the art.
Mm-hmm. And that tension has always existed in American filmmaking,
right.
But to a point we were all talking about a minute ago, is that like, back in the day, there were things where just studio executives would just have weird passion projects that they're like, I don't care if it makes money, we are making this movie. And I feel this is something Soderbergh talks about in that talk, is that like he's like, that does not really exist anymore. But I think it is maybe in some of those smaller side companies, an A24 or an Annapurna or something like that, you get some semblance of that. And the question is, can that break through to the mainline world again? And maybe.
Yeah, I think you have to get people, like it all goes back to where we started. It's like you have to get people back in the movies, because even back in the day, those with some of the few exceptions that broke through, those always had smaller audiences. So when you would have like the art house films, you go see those, but most people weren't seeing those, and now nobody's hardly seeing those, and they're not even making them. I think you have to start by just, if it's going to happen, it's to train people again that like, hey, it's fun to go to the movies. It's better to go to the movies. It's like, once you can get the masses back in the theaters watching the blockbusters, then some percentage of them are going to be like, hey, I crave something better. And those are the ones that start seeing those other films.
I mean, whether or not you like love or hate Christopher Nolan, I feel like if you had 10 of those in our today's market, who are, top of the line directors who are just, they're going to make a movie for a mass audience that is fantastical, or some sort of story driven high concept movie, you're going to get those people to show up, but the problem is we only have him, and he's operating in a like borderline like niche sort of space. I don't know.
Yeah, he's one of the very few that do that, where they make excellent movies that would you'd think would be an art house movie, but somehow it's a blockbuster.
It's the only guy they'll give the money to do that to.
Yeah, but then I think they've been burned too, because they sometimes, like, not everyone can do that. Like, there's a reason Nolan is a one of a kind. Like, but yeah.
Well, what do you think, boys? Did we save movies?
I hope so. We'll find out. We'll check the box office results next week.
Do you want me to recap these points here that I wrote down?
Yeah. How are we doing? What's our save?
So
what's the recipe?
A couple on this list here is having serials or short films before the movies to get people something, and make those exclusive to that movie or that
it's that
showtime.
Week? Yeah, you see
that week.
1 week only, and it's not in the theater no more.
The next one would be longer release windows and longer time before it hits home video or streaming. Then we have, potentially individually renting movie screens for people who choose to do that to get some more income for the theaters themselves. Cheaper movie tickets to reflect the costs of the budget of the movies that they're seeing. Create a better movie palace environment and create a better ambience for the theater itself, and to create movies for like a mass audience that, you know, is not necessarily politically or culturally divisive, but making something that, you know, people want to escape to.
Well, I think we did it. I think the box office number is going to reflect this. I think it's too late for the fall guy.
Credit us with it.
You know, I think Deadpool's...
Movie history will be defined by pre-different frames and post-different frames.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And when Deadpool 3 does well, it's because of us. I think we've...
It's because of, yeah.
And if it doesn't, well, it's not our fault.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby.